everybody. How's everybody doing?
Living the dream.
Hello.
Hello, hello. It's very nice. Let me see. Hello. And let's see. I have Gomez. I have somebody whose name is listed as Gomez there. Hello. And
hey there. My name is Jess. Hi.
Hi there. Hi there, Christina. Lucas. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Let's see. Emerson Coman. Hello there. You look like you might be in, Washington State or something. Okay. All right. Christina, how are you? I see you. You're right next to me on the top of my frame here. I can see you. Erica? Yeah. All right.
Great.
Okay. So we're going to have more people joining as people seem to show up, as we sort of in the first 20 minutes of class. What I'm going to do is just get going because, nobody just wants to hear me blather on. So I'm just going to get going into all of this. And, I'm going to start with some, I work on a handout sheet. Okay. So I'm going to be drawing as I explain things, and some things are already on the handout sheet that I'm going to give you. Sometimes things that take me too long to set up in class will already be on the handout sheet. Some examples based on the breakdowns that I'll be showing you will already be on the handout sheet. And then on top of that, I'm going to be demonstrating on the same sheet. So at the end of the class, you want to go to, the class, Sang-Ah will explain it to you. It's like a forum area, and you'll be able to download the actual sheet I worked on today. All right. And on other occasions, I'll be showing you things on screen, and you can always screen capture things too if you need to. Okay. Because for various reasons, I can't always give you things, but I can show them to you. So just, keep that in mind. All right. So without much further ado, what I'm going to do is get into it. And I'm going to share my screen. And the first thing you're going to see are some breakdowns. All right. Can everybody see the screen here moving around? We're good? Okay. Christina, you're right next to me. So you're the one who has to nod her head, okay, when I ask these questions. All you have to do is nod. And we'll come down here.
Sure, that's easy enough.
All right. Okay. So I'm just going to explain to you the things that we want to think about when we're working on these things. So this is a quick sketch class with anatomy added, right? So there's going to be a fair amount of anatomy. I tend to do a lot of the anatomy when I'm actually doing your critique, okay? So the other thing that happens in this class is I explain things here. That's one lecture. And then working off of your homework assignment, I basically deliver an additional lecture every week. So it's really a lot of information coming out. Some is in the class, some is when I'm addressing people's specific drawing issues. So you may want to watch the critiques of people other than yourself. Okay, so don't just go to yourself. To create a real classroom type experience, you want to see other people being critiqued. You want to see people who are more advanced than you being critiqued, because it sort of invites you to think about new things. And you want to, if you're an advanced person, see people who are perhaps less advanced than you actually being critiqued, because it'll remind you of the fundamentals. And we both need to be reminded of what's ahead of us and also what's behind us with regard to fundamentals. Okay. So here, I'm basically breaking the head down. I'm going to come down here. And again, you can see this is pretty high res. This is a huge sheet, by the way. So if we come in here, you're going to notice that we have the cranium and then the face. Okay. Here, I'm putting the side of the head on like this. This is the temple. Here is the side of the head. And I'll break this down a little more. So what you're seeing is a flat image, a simple shape, which we are constructing upon. Okay. So a flat image, a simple shape, and then we are constructing on the simple shape. There is a difference between the head shape and the face shape. Okay, so in purple is the face. So you can have a fairly narrow face on a fairly broad head. You can have a narrow face on a fairly narrow head. I can have an angular jaw and a rounded transition from the front of the face to the side. I can have an oval head with all oval features in the front. When you're drawing these heads, the first thing you want to do, especially if you're involved in character design, is you want to start getting into the head shape first. It's 80% of getting a likeness is getting this head shape and then putting the face on. If you can get those two things put together, you're over half of the way there, I would say, in terms of getting a likeness. We like to think that we're highly individualized, but actually, you know, we are, you know, sort of mix and match features. Like I have a, you know, fairly square head shape, and then I have, you know, sort of eyes number 6 and nose number 5. And, you know, I always say I'm eyebrow challenged, so I have very thin eyebrows. You know, some people have, you know, thicker lips, some people have thinner lips. You know, I have very thin lips. I'm very sort of squinty, you know, so my eyes are kind of squinty. So, but all of those are standard features. I come from largely an English background, and if you go to England, you see versions of me walking around all over the place, right? So I'm a mix and match set of features, and this is the secret of capturing character, is basically not looking at the person as an individual, but looking at them as a case of mix and match features, and that'll get you in the ballpark, okay? And in fact, it'll get you the whole game if you do it right, all right? So here, we have a thing called pinning the face on, and this here is basically 10 points. And what we're doing is here's the front plane of the forehead. These are all bony ridges. We all have these ridges. All of these features are in slightly different places on all of us. So what happens when you're putting this thing together is you're finding these 10 points, which will be in slightly different positions for all of us. And this is a Russian drawing technique right here, by the way. They call it pinning the face on. And you're pinning it to these basic features here. Here's a little bit more of the Riley head, okay? Because in here you have concentric circles putting it together. And I'll explain this more and more as time goes on. Sometimes because the forehead can get a little thicker in here, you have what looks like a circle, but you have a seam going down the side of the circle there because there's actually a plate change happening there. Here, we're seeing it from the side. So here's the far side here, to this side, down, forward, to the pillar of the eye, find the ear. This is the cheekbone. I suggest people draw a circle there because everybody's cheekbone is different. Number 8 is this little node that's underneath your mouth down here. It's like you got a bunch of muscles that actually create a little bump down here. And that's a great way of finding this little sort of pillar of the mouth area right in here. And then you go to number 9, which is the side of the chin that's closest to you, and number 10 would be on the other side. And these are just variations. Here is a simple setup for the neck, and I didn't overly fill it in. The whole idea here is that the head is a 3 to 5 sided box, depending on what you're seeing. So if I'm looking here, there's the top of the head, here is the front of the head, here's the side of the head. This 10-point system helps you to figure out what the shape of number 3 is on the front of the face. That's what it does. And then here, we're looking down on the head. One of the things that is true is that the face is, and the front of the head is smaller than the back. And what confuses people is when we look at the front of the head, we're seeing the face here, but they don't know what's going on in the blue area. Okay, people don't know what's going on in the blue area. What it's doing is angling away from you from the front to the back. So they'll tend to look at this whole front here and say that's the front. It's not. You're seeing one side, the front, and a second side right here. Okay, and that will help you with the head. And I'm going to break it down more. I just want you to have this information going into your first homework assignment. Here is something else. I'm going to do this a little later on, but these are nice examples of it. So I put it in here. I'm breaking down the hip box here, showing where the sits bones are, how to put it together. And then you're going to find that I tend to put a lot of tumbling figures with little simplified arms and things all over the place because it's a way of giving you lots and lots and lots of examples to look at. Okay, so that, you know, repetition is king. So I'm going to show you how to do this today. And then we're going to, for the rest of the class, be building anatomy and lighting on top of it. Okay. So let me see. Women are different than men. So you're going to notice that I have a slightly different setup here than I have down here. Now, this, gets into all kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to say is that, I'm basically thinking of women and men as kinds of poles, right? And so there's all kinds of variation between the poles. So for our purposes, I'm saying men are basically shaped like a bar of soap, like this. And women, we're going to start breaking them down primarily. Again, they break in half like men do, but we're gonna talk about how big is the rib cage, how big is the waist, and how big are the hips, or how wide are the hips. So it's a 3-part decision-making process. Here I'm explaining it as 2, but you can see that there's a little space in here all the time, which is not present here. This is the beginning of your drawing. Then you're starting to build it out like this, okay? You're gonna notice that there are some effects here too, like the hips are wider, so the great trochanter comes out farther, which means women have a little double bump right here. This little double bump doesn't occur on people with narrower hips. So, the wider your hips, the more you see this little double bump coming out. Okay, so there are some gender distinctions, and so think of them as poles. Okay, I'm going to break this down for you. Here, I just basically did this sketch the other day. So, here's a general proportional system. Here's the breakdown of the rib cage, and I looked at him and thought, okay, he's a decent enough example. So I just placed him next door. So, he is the action pose of this. And then here, I continued to look, is another breakdown, which is more like this. But we just have a little bit more motion in there. I'll break this down for you a little bit more. More examples of figures jumping around and doing things like that. Let me write down a resource for you right now. Okay, we're going to come in here. Let me see. Okay, you want to go to Crocus Cafe. crocuscafe.com. That's a model pose site. Very, very good. And I recommend that you go there and take a look. And also, I recommend that you check out Bodies in Motion. I've been talking about that on my Instagram feed. Okay? And Bodies in Motion is a website. You sign in. I don't believe it costs you anything. They do ask you to register, and that doesn't matter to me. I mean, I just go in there and register, and they have all kinds of great resources in there. They actually have 3D mapped figure poses, and the 3D mapped figure poses are very interesting to me because they'll take somebody like this here, like this is all the same guy. This here is the same guy. And so what they'll do is they'll take him and they map him in 3D, and then they can rotate the camera around, and you can draw one pose in innumerable positions. And I think that's really, really good. Okay. So there are a number of ways that you can get a hold of poses. Pinterest is also good, right? I grab things off of Pinterest. But for what we're doing, these are good. And Bodies in Motion, I don't think they charge you anything. I think it's just, you got to sign up. And I'm not quite sure. Crocus Cafe may have changed a few things. I haven't been there in a while. All right. Okay. So there's a resource for you. Coming over here, this is the beginning of the lecture, but I just want to mention that way over here on the end is another set of resources for you. And this is a good starter list of artists and character designers. It's a mixed bag. Now, by mixed bag, I mean it's everything in the last 150 years. So J.C. Landecker is a 1920s illustrator. Jamie Hewlett is working today. Jan Westbacher is working today. Jin Kim is particularly good for facial expressions. He's a big character designer at Disney. Hickam Habchi, really good contemporary working process. In other words, the tools and the working process he's using is very, very up to date. So he's good for that. Gregory Weir-Quiton is another drawing teacher. He was also a famous fashion illustrator in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And he's just fantastic. Kwang Kim, also very good, very much like Hickam Habchi. TB Choi, I love TB Choi. She's young and she's very, very good, and she's still very actively learning. So there's a kind of excitement to what she does, and she likes it. James Woods, Ivor Haley is actually an Australian war artist from the mid 20th century. James Woods is just a contemporary character designer. Jamie Hernandez is actually from the 90s, and he did the first Comic-Con poster. So he's a very interesting guy. Charles Dana Gibson, late 19th century. Mort Drucker, Mad Magazine. Carter Goodrich and Peter Deceive are basically major character designers who have also done 27 New Yorker covers between, I think, each actually. And so they're really good to look at. Arthur Rackham, early 20th century illustrator, fantastic artist. Corey Loftus is a contemporary designer, contemporary processes, fantastic. Rod Guenedon is actually an animator. He was the animation lead on Kung Fu Panda. And if you go to Rod Guenedon's website, he's really good at just having figures jumping around and doing things, right? So a lot of the people who study with me are learning how to draw the figure. They want to go in the industry. There's a certain amount of, I want to make figures up out of my head, or I want to be able to wildly exaggerate or change reference when I'm using it. So a lot of times people take reference and change it. So, these people will cover that. I could add another list as long as this. In fact, I'm probably going to update this. So as we go along, okay? So let's come all the way over here. Costume stuff. This is basically what I'll be showing you how to do for the moment. And on top of this, I could build any lighting scheme I want, all right? And there are concepts I'm using here, and I want you to think about the concepts. And as we move forward, you're going to start understanding what I'm talking about. I'm not a character designer per se, but I'm doing things that character designers do. I'm exaggerating the size of things. I'm making these stitching here like really big, so it's really obvious and easy to see. I'm posing like a character designer would. So I'm using a lot of the devices they're using. Okay, so I'm setting you up to work with them. All right. So when we are drawing, let me just ask, does anybody have any questions based on what I just said? Usually I'm pretty clear. I ask, but then nobody ever asks me a question. So if you want to ask me a question, you can put it in the chat. And if it seems urgent, Sang-Ha is not at all shy about interrupting me. So, don't worry about that. I will answer your question. Okay, so when we are drawing, we have drawing tools that we're using. One of them we're using is line. Okay, so I can have a straight line. A lot of people draw using a lot of straight lines all the time. The problem with straight lines is they're not all that varied, right? If I use arcs, I can vary that arc any variety of ways. So arcs offer more line variety than a straight line. And if I draw using mainly arcs, my straight line will start to have meaning. In other words, if I draw using only straight lines, then the drawing is going to look stiff and it's going to look like you're measuring your way through the figure. If I draw using arcs, I can vary the arcs. So I can draw an entire figure using arcs, and each arc can be a little bit different. So I'm not going to become overly repetitive. However, I can use a lot of arcs, and if I put a straight line in, that straight line starts to have meaning. You see what I mean? So if you use one thing all the time, it loses meaning. If I use something that offers variety, like arcs, that will help my straight line right here have meaning, okay? So, that's going to be a big deal. Now, the next thing we have is with these lines is a light line goes away. Medium line is going to be in the middle. A dark line is going to appear closer to the viewer. The page is white. So the more my line looks like the page, like this, the farther away it feels because the page is in the back. If I have one that's in the middle like this, then it feels closer to me because it's more different than the white background. If I go dark like this, then what that means is that that's closest to me. So if I have an arm that's going into the distance like this, I'll draw the hand lighter than the elbow, and I'll draw the elbow lighter than the shoulder. You see what I mean? And then my line quality alone will communicate a feeling of distance. All right? Another way to do that is to have a line be thin. So if I have a thin line, and then I have a medium line, that medium line feels closer, and the thin line feels farther away, even though they're the same value. This is what inkers understand. Inkers understand this. They do thick and thin line all the time. I tend to draw using what really look like pencils, so I don't worry about inking. Here is thick. That feels closest. You see what I mean? Now, so we have light, medium, and dark. This is a rule of threes thing, right? Light, medium, and dark. And I have thin, medium, and thick. Okay? Those are 6 line qualities, and there are 9 line qualities that really matter. So this is 3, 3, and the last one I actually just kind of explain. If I have a really soft edged line like this, so soft, and then I have a medium line or medium soft edge like this, and I have a hard edge line like this, the hard is the strongest and the soft is the weakest. Okay? So I have 9 line qualities, but it gets more complicated than that because I could have a soft thin line, right? I could have a soft thin line. I could have, you know, if I come in here and do this, here's a soft line. Then I switch brushes and I make this slightly darker and make it thin. That thin, slightly darker line is more powerful than that big, fat, soft edge light line. You see what I mean? So basically what happens here is I'm not really using light logic yet. I'm just understanding how the pencil works. And so that means I could actually create a feeling of depth in a picture and completely ignore light logic. In other words, I can use line work exclusively and actually have a picture convey the feeling of depth, okay? The next thing I would need to make that work is overlaps, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. We're on a slightly different subject here. Okay, so the next thing we deal with is mass. So this is line. This is number 1. And, you know, just to complete it, lines can be sort of staccato shapes. They can be irregular. Line is line quality, but it's distinctly line. Mass is where line begins to turn into something else, right? So if I have something here going like this, all right, this is a line. This here is a shape or mass. Because what's going to happen is that line is seen first as the square shape. You see what I mean? If I see the shape first, or if I read it as a shape and not a line, it's a shape or a mass. Now, I give you 2 names here. I was taught mass, but there are other people who teach versions of this class in different areas. Sometimes they will use shape as the name. So I'm just giving you both here so you understand it, okay? There is, you know, there's areas where there's not agreement on terminology is what that is. Frequently, masses show up as drop shadows. So I might have, you know, a piece of fabric coming out like this, and then I have this underneath coming down like this, and I'll have a mass down here. Now, I can see lines in the mass. That's not a problem. But see, that reads as a mass. You can see that this here is a line, and this here is a mass or a shape, okay? And these here, by the way, are overlapping planes. It's another critical thing for all drawing. If you take my other classes, you'll find that in this area, I'm basically teaching you how to apply all these tools to different kinds of subjects that you want to draw. And then we get into form. Okay, now form works off of triangles, which we think of as active, circles, which we think of as peaceful, and squares, which we think of as stable. Okay, I used to work this way in grad school, and it drove my professors crazy. They just didn't like the names. So triangles are active because they feel active. I come in here and I go like this, and I start having triangles overlapping, which immediately creates a feeling of depth. You see, overlaps create a feeling of depth. I don't have to use a fancy perspective drawing to get depth. See, come over here like this, put things in here like this. I can keep pushing this back. But what you find is triangles are very pointy. See, they have, you know, they're very pointy. They're more pointy than squares. You know, squares tend to have 90-degree angles. Triangles are more like this. So this is a much more noticeable point. So this is what creates the feeling of activity. If I come in here and throw in a mass and start separating the layers, see, then we get even more. But the triangle sets the mood. The line in the mass is setting the overlaps and establishing, you know, basically how to set up a drawing that actually functions the way we want it to. Okay? Circles are a little more problematic. Circles are peaceful because another word for it could be boring. Circles, here's one in the back, here's one in the front, make one that's a, you know, sort of a medium shape, make one that's bigger, go like this. Circles basically end up looking like bubbles, okay? And so circles are peaceful. Repetitive circles in a composition, say trees that look roundish, will create a peaceful feeling environment. Triangular trees will create an active feeling environment. Poses or heads that are triangular shaped will feel active. Heads that are roundish will feel peaceful. You follow? So the problem with circles, though, is that they break your image up, or they actually, not that so much, as they draw the eye in. I was thinking two thoughts at the same time, and they won't let the eye out. So what happens is the eye goes in like this, and it can't get out. So it's a little bit of a compositional problem. And what circles are used for primarily are as a transitional tool. So this curved corner here, circles taken in bits and pieces, are how we use it most of the time. And there's a really good example of how to explain that, where if I draw this, and I'm going to use technical language here, okay, bring this in. This is called a line, all right? If I do this, this is called an opposition. So drawings are made up by lines and oppositions, and then the bits and pieces of circle that I stick in there are called transitions. So I come in here and I transition this corner, and that's a transition. And I've changed the character of the corner. The eye will come through here faster than it will in the other three. If I come in here like this, it'll go through here even faster. If I come in here, it'll go through there a little slower. And if I leave this in here, the eye bangs into that corner and then has to go like this. This, it goes through. So circles are used to help us transition our way through a single object that we're drawing or a pose. And when we get into things like full-on compositions, circles help us to transition through the entire composition. Simple and complex, which you can see, well, let me finish this here. I'm always changing subject as we go. So I'm going to come over here, move my ball over here just a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Let's put it over here. And what happened there? Okay. So Then what I'm going to do is come up in here, one second. When you teach a class, you're always thinking of 5 things at the same time. Okay. Now, squares. Squares are stable. And what we mean is that they sit on a stable surface like this. I can even have it lean over a little bit. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall over. I can put one behind it, kind of going like this. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall over. Squares are basically used in compositions to determine at the beginning. The very first thing you want to know is where the horizon is. So if I put the horizon down here, I have 2 squares, okay? If I put a triangle in there, I have a beam of light pointing across my composition to my small person down here, and I'm starting to get into compositional devices. If I have a walkway going back to that and I go like this, I have a bunch of little triangles that have been transitioned on the corner. The triangle goes like this, and then I'm coming in and transitioning the corner to turn it into a rounded corner so the eye will easily flow to my focal point, which is right back there, okay? So squares are stable, squares divide space, squares are very helpful, but they're not as active as triangles, and they create a feeling of stability. So we have active, peaceful, and stable, all right? Forms, we have our basic shapes. They grow out of active, peaceful, and stable. So a triangle, yeah.
Some of students have questions. Are masses always black, or do grays count here?
No, they don't have to be black. Masses are simply flat shapes. And in fact, in painting, I teach a painting class, and in the painting class, I have everybody start by designing the entire painting in masses. And then they learn how to put gradations on it. And the gradations are what create the illusion of depth, because then you're starting to handle light. So if we come in here like this, both are masses, you see? I can come in here. It's a very good question. Okay, so we come over here like this. All right. And so there are other things too. We think in terms of the rule of 3s, let's say. I can do this. I can say this is complex, and I'm going to explain complex for figures in a moment. But here is a complex shape. Complex means there's a lot going on inside the shape. Here is a simple shape. Here is another complex shape. And what happens here is I'm creating clarity in all of these cases, because if I put a complex shape next to a complex shape, which is what students do when they start getting excited, is I go in there and I start confusing my drawing, and people don't understand how to interpret it. So I could come in here and create, well, this is going to be high contrast and complex. And this area here is going to be simple, but also a lighter value. See? I can put another simple shape next to that if I want, and just make it an even lighter value. So now I'm using 2 concepts together to make my picture work. See, I'm coming in here and saying, see, I still have clarity, right? I can come in here now. I'll go back to black and I'll say, now it's darker contrast. There's more complex. And I can tell all of these things apart. So when we start designing pictures, especially if you get into costume design, this is something that you're going to do. If I come in here, I'm going to have medium complex. So that's where I come in and I just do this. And I can tell medium complex, as different than complex. So if I come in here, see, this is medium complex, and that is simple. So and then here is values and complexities put together to make everything work. So the rule of 3s, and a lot of what I do is break the component parts of pictures into small chunks, And then when you're drawing and designing, you're recombining them in various ways. All right?
There's another question, if it's possible.
Can I do what?
Oh, there's another question.
Okay, sure.
Can softer lines result in darker drop shadows and interfere with the illusion of depth?
Well, this gets a little bit complicated because if I'm going to make all my shadows black, then the shadows in the back are going to feel like they're in the same plane as the shadows in the front. So, you know, as things recede, what happens is they go to the middle. So the highest degree of contrast and saturation and everything is right in the front of your picture. The farther back we go, you actually lose your whites and you lose your blacks. And that's why they call it going to the middle. You know, you have a full value range in the front, and as we go to the back, it starts going like this. Now, it tends to favor the light or tends to favor the dark a little bit, but either way, it's coming together and starting to favor the dark or the light. So if I have a shadow on my arm in the distance and I have a shadow on my hand in the front, my hand in the front is going to have darker shadows than my arm in the distance because the arm in the distance is overall farther away. Okay? What's really interesting about this is once you start getting into design, well, maybe you want flat dimension. That's actually a design concept where I'm using an element of light logic, but I'm also flattening my image and giving it graphic power. So we have basically two choices. One is the illusion of depth, which is pure light, right? And the other is graphic power. And when you get into picture making, people will combine graphic power with the illusion of depth. And what you'll find is different artists will do it a little differently. They all favor different things. Okay? Me too. I favor different things too. I like different things.
One more question.
Mm-hmm.
Is the medium complex plane in this example still considered as a mass? When does the loose aggregation of the line become a mass?
If I see the shape before I see the lines, it's a mass. In other words, it's how I perceive it. It doesn't matter whether I have, line work in here. Like up in here, this is a mass. You know, technically speaking, I guess we'd have to say filling this thing in like this is a mass. Okay, I'm just completely filling it in. All right. But the problem with that is that if I use that too much, I'm going to have too much of the same thing showing up in my picture all the time, right? And I want variety in my picture. So if I come in here and I go like this, okay, I see a square here, right? I also see a square here. So they're both masses, okay? As a practical matter, okay? Occasionally I have, some sort of technician who shows up and argues these points. But as a practical matter, when you're drawing, you will be using both of these. Like, for example, this one here, number 2, feels farther away. Number 1, because it has no white in there to make it lighter, feels closer. Okay? See how that works? If I come in here, okay, that feels farther away still. Okay, come in here. I'm not putting a light on anything yet. This is just a phenomena of how the pencil works. Know your tool, know your surface, right? And when we're working with a pencil, even digitally, these are what pencils do. And in the computer, even a paintbrush is like a variation on the pencil. It's like a pencil with softer edges, right? So, the thinking is, you're not switching medium when you go from pencil to painting on a computer. You are in paint. All the handling characteristics are different, but it's not the same on a computer. Okay? All right. Any other questions? We good? Okay. So the next thing we're going to deal with is form. And everything is made up of a limited number of forms. Okay, so form basically is a volume. So here is a cone, here is a pyramid, here's a prism, here's a cylinder, okay? Here is the circle, which by the way stays flat because it has no corners. Here is a cube, which is basically the most dimensional shape. The more lines you have projecting forward on the inside, the more easily the shape can project its dimension, you see? So these are inside corners which are projecting forward, okay? But you'll notice here, I only have one inside corner projecting forward in here. Here I have 1, 2, 3. So these shapes are more easily made dimensional. And you have to continually remind people, especially with a cylinder, that they're looking at a cylinder. And I'll get into that as we go forward, okay? I add the ribbon because the ribbon is simply so important to everything that I think a ribbon is worth adding. So a ribbon is an S curve. I draw down and I can arc in or be straight like this. Okay, arcing in gives it a little style. They're going to get a little bigger as they come forward. And then I'm going to draw a lighter line through this like this. And that will give me dimension. If I do this, I have a volume with a curved surface, you see? And in another class, I would say if I do this, I'm starting to draw grass. And I would use simple and complex, which means I'll project the grass forward on the corners. So this is complex, this is simple, this is complex, this is simple, okay? Simple and complex is prima facie, okay? It's just basically very, very straight up. Now, here is how simple and complex shows up in art class. If I'm drawing a figure, this is the shoulder, this is coming in like this. This is going to be simple because it's stretching. So it's stretching, okay? And it's also simple. And I can make it artificially simple if I want. I can look at a figure and make the simple side simpler. I can make the more complex side more complex, and it'll actually push the action. If you want to push the action of your pose, the way you do it is by making the simple simpler and the complex complexer. Is that a word? Anyway, now the complex side is going to come in like this. See? And what you're going to find is that your eye goes here. So the eye tends to go to the complex side, okay? And then if I do a center line coming in, we're going to start getting into this in a moment. See, like this. See what I'm saying? And then I'll say, okay, here, that's the simple side. Here is the complex side, see? And I'm going to start breaking these things down and showing you how to do them, okay? And then here, all right, here's not a particularly realistic head shape. There we go, okay? Now, then we just start building a little bit of the anatomy on the inside, see? And we're going to start getting to the point where we're starting to look at what is going to be anatomy. And what I'm doing now is called putting the front on the box. I'll explain that too. Here's the side, there's the calf. Drawing inside the form is going to build out the composition, build out the volume as well. All right? Okay, so simple and complex. This is how I do it. I draw all over everything. And what you're going to do is use a process. Now, here is our process right here. The first part of the process is simple shape and construction. Okay. The middle part of the process we call drawing. And this is kind of putting it on style, filling it in. Okay. Filling it in can be interpreted in a number of different ways. For the moment, we're just going to call it filling it in. And then the final stage is called accenting, eye path to the focal point, and most importantly, making it look cool. Okay. Now, when I'm in class, when I always say making it look cool, half the class smirks and laughs, right? So, you know, I always ask for a show of hands. Who does not want their drawing to look cool when they're done with it, right? Okay. I've never had anybody raise their hand when I ask that question. I don't even think once. So there's always an idea of making it look cool, if only to you. So here's how this process works. It's well planned. Simple shape and construction is planning. The middle third, filling it in, is filling it in, and the final third is finishing. Okay. Here is why drawings fail, okay, for most people when they just do this. They don't plan, they just start drawing. They draw as far as they can, and when they don't know what to do, they declare the drawing finished, but they don't have a plan for finishing the drawing. In other words, they don't have a drawing process. They just start, hope for the best, and when it comes grinding to a halt somewhere along the way, they'll say, I'm done. But they don't really know whether they're done or not, right? Because they're not using a process. The only way you know whether you're done or not, the only way you know whether you're improving or not, is if you use a process and you learn this process. The process itself can evolve. That's not an issue, but you need to use a process. So most drawings fail because people don't plan them and they don't finish them. They just start in the drawing stage. So 3 stars next to the process here. So when you look at this later, you're going to say, why is he drawing all those stars up there? And it's going to be because I want you to do this. And if I have you do a 5-minute drawing, you take 5 minutes, break it down into thirds, and that's how you do it. Okay? Now, as time goes on, you guys will individuate. And as you individuate, you'll start sort of evolving your own process. It's not really so much about this process exactly, but most of my students don't have one, so use mine. And then it will evolve into yours as time goes on. All right? Okay. So now let's get into actually drawing a figure. You guys are probably wondering which class you were in. Okay? So when we draw a figure, and I'm going to do it loosely here, but you're going to see that it's tight on the other end, okay? Here we're going to draw from head to toe, you draw a line. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to divide this in half. So now I have 2 equal sides. Then I divide each one in half. Then I'm going to take the top one and divide it in half. So and then I'm coming in here and dividing it in half. Same thing here. And then I'm taking this and dividing it in half. This is because my math skills are so poor that I can't divide something in thirds. So we're just going to do it in half. So, you know, everything is divided in half. The head is right here. the pubic bone is right here, and the bottom of the foot is right here. If I have a vanishing point back here, I can draw a line here, and I can draw a line through here. I can draw a line through here, and I can say the head is this big, the pubic bone is here, okay? Why am I using this as an 8-head figure? Some people use a 7.5 head. Some people use a 6 3/4 head. All of them are inaccurate. If they were accurate, we'd all be the same size and shape. Why do I like this one? Because it's simple. And I can always make it a 7.5 head figure by just going, here's this, making the legs come up just that much. See what I mean? I can turn this into a 7.5 head figure really easily, but 7.5 heads means I have to deal with fractions all the time when I'm trying to plan an entire picture. That's complicated enough. I don't want to do it. You see? So I can slide this over here like this. See, this is a flat plane going over here. Now I put somebody over here. All right, an hour into the class, you're doing figure composition. I come in here. Here's a head here. I slide it over here. I got a guy standing in here, or a person standing in here. Okay? So by going back to the vanishing point and forward and sliding figures back and forth like this, I can place my figures anywhere I want them, and I can make them any size I want. All right? Okay. Now, with this 8-head figure, there's another way of measuring, and it's very, very helpful. So I'm going to come down here, and we're going to call this the hand system. Okay? I divide it just like I did before. So here's the head, okay? We zoom in. Now, your nose is 1/3 of the way up from your chin. So your nose is right here. So right here is roughly a hand length. If I go like this from the base of my nose to the top of my head, it's going to be off by about that much. You see what I mean? This is close enough. Remember, we're not all the same. Some people have big heads, you know. Some people have small heads. Some people, you know, so, I mean, nobody's really shaped the same. There is no average. We're all different. But this is helpful because it gets you in the ballpark. So, you know, this will be inaccurate in this drawing by this much. Who cares? Okay? If I come down 1 head length, allow a space, I can come, or 1 hand length, I can come out 1 hand length here, 1 hand length here, and that's the clavicle. I can come down 1 hand length, that's the base of the sternum. I come down 1 hand length, and this is the lowest attached rib. I come down 1 hand length. This drawing's not quite accurate, so I'm going to move things down a little bit. Okay, so I have to bring all this down because I didn't make the line quite long enough. But here, this is the rib cage going up behind the neck. Okay, now on a man in here, you're going to see in some variation on a square like this. Okay, now technically they'll say it's perfectly square, but again, we're human beings, we're organic, it'll never be perfectly square, you know, but they'll tell you that anyway. Then down here, this is the hip box right down here, and the great trochanter sticks out slightly from the hip box, and it's going to come down it has decided not to fill in the background for me for reasons I don't understand. But 1 second.
Did you have paint tool, Will?
Hold on a second.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a way to fix it. I don't want to figure it out right now. Okay, there we go. One thing that happens when you teach on the computer is that suddenly the computer decides to change something. I blame the computer. And, you know, it always happens in front of 25 witnesses. Okay, so here's now the new halfway point. So what happens is the leg comes in like this. Here is the top of the knee. The pillar of the knee is down here. So we'll say this is the halfway point. Then it comes out a little bit more like this. And here we have the feet down here. So what's going to happen is this is 1/2 from here to here, down to here. This is why I put the clean one on the side. And then here's the pubic bone. Here is 1/2. So that is the base of the knee. And I'll show you how that works. And then here is where the great trochanter is. Now on the head system here, which I didn't quite complete, we have, I'm going to just take this here and I'm going to change color. That's the way to do it. And my swatches are gone. Okay, so on the head system, 1 second. Okay, here is the head. There. Okay, here is what I want you to see. Okay, that's a head. 2 heads down are where the nipples are. 3 heads down is where the belly button is. 4 heads down is the pubic bone. So on the head system, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 down to here. Then it's another 4 down to the feet. Here's the issue though. With the soft parts of the body, like nipples and belly buttons and things like that, these things are not generally in the place they're supposed to be because they're on the soft surfaces of the body and they move around a lot. The advantage of the hand system is that these are all bony points, okay? And the points that really count are this one to this one. So I'm just going to put it in. Here to here. There's a space. Here to here. 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 All of these are hand measurements. This is a hand measurement. And then switch colors. This area in here is a little bit different. This is the front of the hip, and this is going to be about 3/4 of a hand on a man, and it could be considerably less on a woman, but that's not always the case. So that's going to be about 3/4 of a hand right down here. Okay. With men, men tend to have a slightly deeper pubic bone than women do. So the pubic bone goes down a little farther, not as far as a hand, but this is the front of the hip box. See, so the hip box is coming back like this. The great trochanter comes out. That's the outside of the leg, which is coming down like this. And so here is the side. The sits bones are underneath. So they are under here, which is where your rear end is attached. With a woman's area down here, it tends to be a little bit wider, but not always. And it tends to be a little higher, but not always. Also, this can sometimes be a little higher. The spine of the iliac up in here can be a little higher. And again, if the hips are wider, like this, women's legs are also, as a rule, shorter. It causes the great trochanter to stick out farther. So what happens is you get that double bump that you see on women's legs. And that's a, you know, gender distinction in there. Okay, again, it's quite variable, quite variable. But if you do this, if you draw it this way, somebody will look at this right here and they will say that's a woman's leg, right? So it's identifiable as a woman's leg. All right. So let's take a look at this again from another viewpoint. So now we've done head and we've done hand. Let's carry this over here like this. Okay. And if I take this, the width is less important than the lengths. What you're going to find is that this is the halfway point. So the top of a torso is half rib cage. All right? That's really important, by the way. The top of that torso, 1/2 rib cage. Okay? So we come in here. Then we come down here, and the bottom part is going to be 1/2 hip box down here, like this. Now, that's for a man. If we carry this over a little farther, like this, this stays the same. So I'm going to come like this. And here is the rib cage, which may be smaller. The hip on a woman, here it is on a man right here. Women also have longer stomachs than men do. And the way we do it is we lower the top of the hip box a little bit. So you're going to take a look and you're going to say the hips are, the top of the hip is a little bit lower. So on a man, you get this shape in the stomach like this. So this is a measurement you look for. It's going to be not a perfect square, but it's going to be something that will be somewhat like that square. And on a woman, you're saying, what is this shape in here? Okay. Now, in my experience, women are more variable than men. Okay. Men tend to be thinner. They can be thicker. So they're generally wider. You know, if they're young and working out, they're a little bit bigger on top. You know, they get hired, they've got their office job, they're making movies, they can start looking a little bit like this, right? Okay? But it's variations on essentially a rectangle, right? That's basically working out. Now, with women, it's what is the size of 1, the rib cage, 2, the abdominis, and 3, the hip box, okay? You have to get those 3 decisions to work. So, you know, an easy way of doing it is saying, here is how wide the shoulders are, and you just draw like this into the halfway point, and then you say, where is the great trochanter? This is the simplest possible measurement. You see what I'm saying? So, shoulders, legs, okay? Here, shoulders, and then we come in, well, here, let's see, shoulders, and here's the great trochanter, there's the legs. Okay, now, we know that her back is going to come in, and we know that we're also going to have this in here, but now I'm starting to construct, right? This is simple shape. This is all simple shape. Once I start coming in and doing things like this, you see? See how she looks like it looks like a woman's leg. That's that double bump, see? This gets smaller. Some women can have, you know, fairly wide hips, fairly narrow waist, and actually fairly broad shoulders, right? So there's a lot of variation in all of this. Just remember that when you're being taught how to draw this stuff, and we're being, you know, I'm saying men look like this, women look like that, that's just to simplify the subject. That's just to simplify it and make it, you know, give you a starting point. You have to do this with the assumption that everybody's different, okay? And so keep that in mind. And then this comes up, all right? So let's take a look at the torso from another viewpoint. I'm gonna come over here, oops. And I'm just gonna say, here it is, simple, complex. Okay, that's a flat shape here and then here. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, well, you know, we could say that, describe this in a bunch of ways. I'm saying it's a cylinder, and the cylinder is going to go like this. Okay, or other people will describe it as the front and the side of a box, with the sides coming in like this. See what I'm talking about? Okay. But we use the hand system. So I'm going to switch to red again and say, okay, what is the most important line in this drawing in terms of helping me to find depth and help me to find, come on, it's that center line right here. The center line is critically important. The thing about that center line is that it's never in the center. Here, because the box is turning away from me, the center line is going to be over here. Okay? So here, the center line is here, and I'm going to say 1 hand length, 2 hand lengths, find the other side, find the hip, and this here is the 3-finger gap right in here. It's a little gap that's right in here like this. And what happens is all the muscles of the top of the body attach here, and all the muscles on the bottom attach down here. And then here is the pubic bone, which is 3/4 or less of a hand. So here we have clavicle, 1 hand, clavicle, 1 hand, but if something's going away from me, it gets shorter, doesn't it? Right? So if I have an arm reaching out like this, this all feels bigger and closer, right? And also all of my cylinders are going to go like this, see? If I have an arm going away from me, the same person, they're going to get smaller, and you're going to notice that I'm showing you the cylinders going a slightly different way. See, and there we go, like that. And then here, see? Okay, so it gets bigger and smaller. Okay. All right. Here, let me get my swatches. There we go. My Photoshop decided to reset right before class, I think. Okay. So if I come in here, this is the shadow side. Okay. And if I'm going to draw this figure here, I have to get a shadow side in there. And for this, I'm going to slow down a little bit and draw just a little bit more carefully. So if I want to draw a figure rotating around, I know that this is going to be half of it. I know there's a middle section, and that middle section with the rear end and the top, this is going to be roughly half, and that'll be roughly half, right? Okay. Then the arm fits in here, the arm fits in here, and the legs are going to fit in here like this. Okay. All right. This is from the back, by the way. So if I put in this scapula, coming in like this, okay, this is where the arm begins. And if I want the arm to come towards me like this, I make the cylinders go this way. If I want to make the arm go away from me, I reverse the cylinder. Now it's going away from me. You see what I'm saying? If I want to make the arm come out like this, I'll choose a simple side. And I square off this area right here. Okay? Because the hand fits down here, and the hand is the exact same width as your wrist. So if I put the hand in here like this, I can put thumbs in, I can put things in here like this. And if I come up, there is the volume of my arm. And what you're going to see is the deltoid wraps over that, see, like this. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to start saying, okay, well, this turns into a muscle. This is a muscle. This is a muscle. This is a muscle. That's the side of the hand. We start fitting everything in. Okay, so today we're just kind of working with all this stuff. All right. In here, you know, here, this is the only part of this cylinder that's of interest to me. See, I'll come in here like this, but all of my lines are going to comport to that cylinder. Then I come up here. Here is the front of the body, see? So this is the front of the rib cage. There is the top of the rib cage, and we are drawing over the surface of that rib cage. You see what I'm saying? Okay, let me come out of this just for a moment and see how everybody's doing. Are you guys following me pretty well? Yeah? Okay.
Well,
yes.
there was a questions about the 3-finger gap and jump start video, if you can answer to that.
I don't know. What was the question again? Where is it?
The question number 1 was, can you explain the 3-finger gaps a little more in detail? And
okay, yeah,
do
that. I'll do that.
I'll do that later.
Okay, so here, go back into my screen. I was actually going to get to that just now, so we're in good shape. Okay, so coming in here, let's talk about this hip box here for a moment. Now that we've got you drawing over volumes, see, like here, everything is going to go like this, right? See? Here, everything is going to go like this. If you guys can get that, you already draw better than half the people I know. Okay? So, if we come in here, this is how the hip box is constructed, okay? It starts out it's a box. And from the side, it's actually much narrower than people think. It's not that thick. Your butt muscles actually fill everything in, and then your abdominal muscles in the front fill in the other side, right? So the three-finger gap is a little area right up in here. And what confuses people about it is that it's not a bone. You know, it's sort of like everybody breaks the body down into bones and fat pads and stuff. But what this is an area. So this is coming down like this, and it angles back slightly like this, okay? And then here, I would arc it forward like this, see? Here is where the tailbone is, right back in here. And this is a little awkward for people. So I go like this, see? And then this goes like this. Now, this does not come up all that far. It comes up a little farther on women than men, but not a whole lot, okay? If I look at it from the side, if I take any box and draw across the corners like this and down, like this, okay? The three-finger gap is here, and it angles back. This is going like this, and there's the tailbone. This is coming down, and sticking out slightly is the pubic bone, which is why you see a little mound in people's pubic areas down there, okay? The great trochanter is the outside of your leg bone. So your femur comes in, here's the ball joint that fits in. It comes out, and there's an area on the outside like this. And this area here is the GT, the great trochanter, okay? And it is on the outside, the muscles attach inside of it and on top of it. And it's installed right parallel with the pubic bone, but it favors the back slightly, okay? So if I come in here and draw a cross like this, there is the center line. The great trochanter is here, see? Here, then I draw over, I'm seeing through, in other words, the hip is semi-transparent. I now know the great trochanter is on the other side, and it goes like that. Why is the great trochanter, or why is the three-finger gap important? That's the question people have. So here's the gap right in here, okay? And the leg attaches here at the top of the gap, right in here, or the bottom of the gap, and it attaches on either side of the pubic bone. So if I look at this from the front, three-finger gap, pubic bone, it's not a point, it's a bone. So what happens is there is a separation between the legs in here like this. Now that separation is oftentimes obscured by fat pads that come in like this. Also, the genitalia is always below that point, and the sits bones are down below it. So you have these sits bones that are about a third of the length of your box. So if this is the hip box, which I take you down to here like this, that's where the sits bones are down here. And the back of the legs are attached to those. Sometimes if you look at some simplified drawing breakdowns, they show you this bucket that looks like this and say that's the torso. You've probably seen that. Loomis uses that. Personally, that bucket is so ugly to me that I just can't look at it, right? So, I mean, I find that bucket, it's accurate. It's just not at all helpful to me because I'm offended by its appearance. So, I'm going to come in here and pull this a little farther out. Why is it doing that? Why does it not fill? It's like the whole thing reset while I wasn't looking.
I can explain it later.
Yeah, we'd do it later. Thank you, though. I have a good half-baked solution. 1 second.
By the way, it's 10:20. Just let you know.
Okay. Oops. Okay. All right. So attaching the legs. Coming in here, the legs come out about 1 head and a half. And they pull out. This is the skinny leg. This is what I call it, okay? So this is coming down like this. And on this side, the skinny leg has to get over the sits bones and it comes down like this, all right? This is a flat shape, okay? That doesn't bother me because to turn that flat shape into a cylinder, I just do this. Cylinders only exist on the ends. They exist here and they exist here. This doesn't look like a cylinder. I have to come in and remind people that it's a cylinder. So if I come out here like this and I do this and I start using arcs, this is very quickly going to start looking like a leg. You see what I mean? So there's no problem at all working with these things flat and then attaching them. All right. So this is where this is. And then the sits bones are down here, which means that the rear end is going to come in under here like this. The pubic fat pad is coming in like this. See? And then here is the knee right in here. Now, this gets into anatomy, and I'm not so concerned about that. But the attachment point is important. And also, if you go to my Instagram feed, you find lots of anatomy, and I'm going to be posting things here for you too. So this comes in. If I round it, suddenly that gets to be more volumetric. You see what I'm talking about? Okay. So let's talk about this. If I'm going to take this hip here, the hip is doing this. This is always a 90-degree angle. This comes over here like this because the rib cage is a semi-fixed element. It doesn't bend very much. The rib cage can go this way. The hips can go this way. It's the center that does all the squashing, okay? So, you know, 1, that's fixed, pretty much. 2 is squishy. And then 3 is absolutely fixed, okay? So you learn how to draw these things in perspective. So if I draw this like this, and the key to this is this box. You just get this box in here. Here's a hip. See? I draw up, back, I do this, I do this, I do this. Now, what's interesting is stomachs stick out. So the stomach is going to go like this in the front, which means this center line, which is never in the center, is going to be way over here. There's the pubic fat pad, see, coming in like that. Okay? All right. So that's the hip. If I look at it from the back, goes like this. Now, cross it, down. Great trochanter comes from behind that line, so it favors the back. The tailbone is here, and it comes out a little bit like this. 3-finger gap is here, and this is coming like this in the back. You can't see much in here, but the sits bones are here, okay? So if I come in, and I'm just going to draw this box in here like this again. You start to discover how little you really need. I'm going to come in and say, okay, Here is the leg coming out. It's round, so I'm going to draw the end of the cylinder. Here is the rear end coming out. Here it's attaching in here. Here is the rear end coming out and in. It's attaching in here. Okay? So you see how it wraps around all that form? But you have to get below those sits bones. And again, we're going to get into all the anatomy on these things. The great trochanter is in here, so everything here is going to be working its way around that great trochanter, you see, and coming in like this, coming in here. You're going to get drop shadows over there. All right? And again, when you come to the other end of this, all the way over here, you're going to find, oops, lots of examples. That's why I fit this up, because I run into issues with not having enough class time. So see, these are cleaned up versions of everything that I was showing you. So you have nice clean versions over here. All right? And also, these are good examples of how to make it work. Okay, so let's just take a look at the rib cage for a moment. I'm drawing my box.
Well,
Yeah.
before you go to the case, can you answer to one question on the chat?
One brief question. Yes.
Anatomically, is the three finger gap basically the space between the superior and inferior anterior?
Yes.
Okay.
It's an area, and the reason the area is important is because here it is right here. I'm going to put it in here again so you can see it. And the reason it's important is because it has one part of the body that attaches above it, importantly, and another part of the body that attaches below it, importantly. So if I do this, here's the pubic bone, and I bring this leg out. I have this leg coming in. Okay, so great trochanter. Okay, then up into here. Now, the abdominal muscle right here, if we take this top part, so now we have the area where the rib cage is up here. If I divide that in half, here's the pit of the neck. This is where the pectoralis is, see? So the pectoralis divides the rib cage in half. So here, pectoralis, it goes up the front of the rib cage, and I'll explain that a little bit. Okay? And the abdominal muscle attaches on the front of the rib cage right below the pectoralis. So it comes in right underneath the pec, right in here, and it comes down into here like this. Okay? And it's right in here. So the front of the torso, if we really want to get fussy about it, is right here. It is the abdominal muscle and the pectoralis on the front, right in here. Okay? Then we have an area called the sheath of the rectus abdominis. Come on. And the sheath is a membrane, and it fits right in here on the inside of the three-finger gap. So here is this three-finger gap in here, and notice that everything is fitting around and near that three-finger gap. So I'll come in here, and we'll come up in here and say, This is the sheath of the rectus abdominis. It's a separate structure within the body that you want to draw. And what happens is the anatomy fits inside of all of this, okay? Then we have the external oblique, which attaches right here. So you come in here like this, and this is where the external oblique, which is on the outside of the body, comes in. And we'll get into the latissimus and things like that up in here, the infraspinatus and all that. And this comes up like this. See? And that attaches along the top of the iliac crest, and that's on the top of the three-finger gap. See? Right in there. So this here, I'm going to come in and make that a slightly different color. So this is coming in, and this is the side of the body right in here. This is the side of the body. Yes, I can see it on the front, but we are boxes with rounded sides. And that's what you're seeing right there. Okay? Now, coming into the leg, right? If I come in here and I want to make the it just slipped my mind, but the muscle on the top of the leg right in here. Right in here. This fits right in here like this, see? And it attaches right at the base of the three-finger gap. And then you have adductor muscles that pull in here like this, and you have this coming in. If I want this to go back, I'm going to use overlaps like this. So that leg is going back, and you'll notice that it's starting to feel more round, okay? And, you know, this is going to come in and end in here and then come into tendons. I'll get more into that as time goes on. As we come over here at the base of the three-finger gap right in here, this is where the sartorius is coming in. And I have just, saying out, what's the name of the muscle on the top of the leg? It's just slipped my mind. She's looking it up online. Okay. I'll remember it in a minute. It's just instant recall.
Wait, the rectus femoris?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Something about, you know, when I'm drawing and explaining and doing all that, the names sometimes fly out of my head. Okay, so you see what I'm talking about here? Okay, so this is the vastus lateralis coming over the top onto the inside. Here it's coming in. And then, you know, I don't know what this person's doing. Maybe they're jumping. See? Come back here. That's where the foot will be. All right? These things here, this is the pectoralis. It comes up. And then the arm wedges into it. They call it wedging. And again, if I want the arm to come up, see, I'll do this. So the rib cage, this explains, I think, pretty well what's happening in here. And right in here is the three-finger gap that we're talking about. See how everything attaches? If you look over here, all of the muscles on the side of the rear end are over here. Okay? When we get in here, the rectus femoris in the front here, this muscle right in here attaches at the bottom of it. This is what I would say from this position is the front of the leg. And then I would say in this position, this is the side of the leg. And you'll see another explanation of this. And this is also the side of the leg. It's angling away slightly, but the point here is to get you to understand front and side. You see?
Well,
now, yes.
It's 10:37, just to let
Okay,
you.
thank you. And so here, is a thing called putting the front on the box. If I do this, that will look pretty good, okay? So there's the hip box, and then I have, you know, the knee here, something coming in like this. Okay. The trick to making it dimensional is if I have a box going like this, I know it's a box, but what's missing are the key components that make it a box, which is these lines. I have to put the front on the box. If I have a box going like this, I'm actually missing a lot of that box. If I put this in, I've got the complete box. You see what I mean? So I'm going to come in here and draw what's in front like this. And this is what's going to make this drawing come alive. I'm going to put the bone in the front, which means this is on the side. I put the bone in the front, which means this is on the side, okay? If I come in here, you'll see a number of knees, by the way, over on the other side. Coming in here like this. This is on the front, this is behind, this is behind, this is behind, that's behind. If I go like this, I'm now putting the front on the foot, you see? If I come in here and I draw the toes, I'm putting the front on the foot. It all gets more dimensional the more I describe the front, see? 3-finger gap. All right, so that's what this is doing. This is describing front. It projects the front forward. This is describing front. Projects it forward. All of these pinks are on the side. Okay? With the rib cage, this is what you need to be aware of. The rib cage starts out as an egg like this. The opening for the neck is here. We come down 1 hand length base of the sternum, forward 1 hand length, down 1 hand length. This is all flattish right in here. Notice that I use the word ish. Here, this actually goes down a bit because you have non-attached ribs below the lowest attached rib. This comes up like this, and the clavicle is slightly S-shaped, and it's going to go like this, see? The pectoralis is right here. The ball joint for the arm is right here. The pectoralis does not cross the center. It is attached to the first third of the clavicle, and it attaches right below the ball joint. So this comes up and out like this. So there, in the simplest term, is the pectoralis right there. So this is coming down. There's the ball joint. This is going to go to here because it attaches in the front and come in like this. If I come down, here is the 3-finger gap, okay? So the rib cage from the side looks like this. It's actually rather squarish, and you have a flattish shape down here, comes in. The flattish side of the rib cage is where the external oblique attaches in simple terms. And remember, we take this distance divided in half. There's the pectoralis. There's the armhole, right? See? Stomach muscles attach below it and come in. Again, I'm going to give you more anatomy. And then the scapula is on the back. And very quickly, and then here, see, there's the arm. There's the other one. Okay. So from the front, from the side, it looks like this. From the front, it actually looks a bit like this because it flattens out in here like this. This comes in. The opening is bigger than you think. This comes in, this comes down like this, and it goes like this. Few ribs underneath, and this is flattish on the front. Okay. Here, clavicle, scapula, straight back. The scapula pulls off the rib cage. Really show people that it pulls off. Here, the clavicle is going like this. Okay. Coming in, spine, front. Okay. And then 3/4 view is like this. You draw the egg. It's bigger on the bottom than the top. This is coming in like this. This comes in. It's going to be much smaller on the far side than you think. And then this comes in, goes like this. That's the lowest attached rib. Remember, there's some unattached ribs down here. And this is where the stomach is fitting in here. This comes over. This comes in, ball joint. And then the scapula is back in here. And you have the coracoid process in here. A little more anatomical. I'll get into that more. So if I'm drawing a figure, see, I can go like, I have to decide what I want to do. Hold on a moment here for just a second. Okay. If I want to draw a figure, I can say here, here, here. Then what I do is I do this and I pull into the arms. You see this? And I bring the arms down like this. Then here is the center line coming in. And so this is coming out, in, up, back. Here, pectoralis is pulling this way. This arm is going this way. So notice how I'm creating that simple pectoralis shape. And then this arm is going to come off like this. So I have to decide, do I want my complex here and my simple here? Let's just say yes. Put this in, and then we'll have a hand out here. Here, the hand is going back. Here, I'm going to take, and I didn't get a chance to get to this, but if we take if we think of it this way, this is 2 boxes as measurement. This is rib cage and hip box. If I had a 3rd box up here, that's the same size as the bottom 2, that's the head. And I'll take this and divide it in half. And then I take the bottom part and divide it in half. And that's where that head fits in. You're going to see that on the other side. And then here, this is where the ball joint is. This is where the great trochanter is. And the muscles fill out the box. So what's happening here is I might come in here and say, okay, here to here, here to here. And I use that as a guide to help me find, you know, where I want to put that head, which in this case is looking up, right? Here, hip, 3-finger gap, pubic bone, okay? So this is, I'm going to find a spot and say, where do I want to pull the leg out from? I'll probably come in here, and it's sort of convenient. Where is a good spot? I'll come in here like this. And then show the back of the leg and show the lower leg coming out of the back of the leg. And then I'll show the heel coming out and the foot, okay? And then here, top, side, insert it. And that's being inserted into the sits bones in the back. And again, I'm going to get into more of this. First day is always hard for me because I want to give you so much information. It's hard to do. And then here, the foot is going back. Okay. And in this case, it's a woman. So you're going to have this here. And, you know, she'll be wearing, she's a gymnast or something. So she'll be wearing something. This is my simple construction sketch. That's what that is. So, you know, if I was doing this as a design, I would then lighten it and I'd start coming in and I'd start pushing all of these shapes, you see. I'd start coming in and pushing this, what's in front, what's behind, you know, where is the nose, where are the eyes, you know, where are the muscles coming in down here? I know where they all are, so it just takes me a while to put them in. Where is the muscle on the side of the leg? How do I put the front on the box? This is a question you're asking yourself. How do I put the front on the box? There's the front on the box. Here is the front on the box. You see what I mean? See how it makes it more dimensional every time I do that? Every time I put the front on the box, it's going to get more dimensional. Okay? What's another one? Here's one. Come in here. Somebody's sitting up here. In this case, again, half and half here. When I do this, I'm putting the front on the box, aren't I? See? And then here, we're coming in, there's the stomach, 3-finger gap, pubic bone, right? And then this leg is inserting in here like this. It's flat. Here's the leg coming out and down, and this is coming in like this, and they're flat until I do this, see? If I start coming in and putting in these cylindrical shapes and arcs and some of these knee shapes that I'm showing you. Okay, and then I can come in here. Women have a slight arc. Women are a little bit more limber in the joints than men are. So you're going to find that a characteristically female arm will tend to have a slight arc in here. And it's actually part of the bone structure. So it's a real thing. And it's one reason why men have stronger upper bodies than women generally do. And part of it is that men come to a straight line and it's a stronger structure. So, you know, you're always trading strength versus, other kinds of advantages like flexibility, see? So she's coming in like this. And then again, here to here. And I'm just gonna go boom, like that. There is the top of the head, here to here. I'm gonna say front of the head. And I explain how to do this. See, like this. There's the nose. There are the eyes. There's the top of the head. There's the neck. I have to put the face on. So this is where I'm not going to slow down and do it. But you might pin the face on. There's the ear. And then again, see what I'm talking about? What's another one? Let's see.
Bill,
Yeah.
it's 10:50.
Okay. You're saying I'm taking too long?
Eh,
I probably am. Okay. So this is what I'm saying. And so what I want you guys to do for homework. See this here? See this here? Putting the box on, arcing, these kinds of arms, right? Using this construction, I want you to do, well, I'm going to say 30. 5-minute drawing. Okay? If you're really good, then what I want you to do is better 30 5-minute drawings. Okay? If you are, yeah, I can see Christina laughing. If you're really good, I just want your drawings to be better, right? So Bodies in Motion is great for that stuff. And so is Pinterest and, all of that. Go to my own Instagram feed and you'll find a lot of ways to draw hands, feet, all that kind of stuff. Plus, I'm going to break it all down for you. Remember, the first day, there's just an awful lot to go over, right? And so what I want you to do is just work the system, okay? So, working the system is literally just, here, I'm just going to go and look at reference when you do it, right? And you're going to start finding that if the reference is awkward, here's the center line, connect that there, here is the knee. See, the knee comes in. I can take any of these drawings and make, an academic study out of it if I want. The older I get, though, the less I want, I can tell you that. But here, there's the other side, see? Here, armhole, I would say, what is the big shape? Okay, so we're going to bring this down. Get here. Here to here. This is what I want you to do. I just want you to do it 30 times. This is simple shape and construction. What you're doing is the first third of the drawing. See what I'm getting at? Okay. And you'll have 5 minutes. That was about 2 minutes, right? So you'll have, you have an additional, luxurious 3 minutes, right, to get in there and work this thing up. Okay. So let me open it up for a few moments. Does anybody have any additional questions for me?
What's the difference between step 2 and step 3 in the process, filling it in versus finishing it? I'm coming from a couple years at the Watts Atelier online where everything's very graphic and light dark. So this is kind of confusing for me in that regard. I understand that at the beginnings, I wouldn't really know how to fill it in without like going in and mapping out shadows and stuff. Like what, or is that what filling it in is? Filling it in the shadows and such?
Well, for you, it might be. For you, it might be. For somebody else, it might be pure line drawing, okay? So part of this has to do with what do you want to get and what do you want to do with your drawings down the line? Now, I have a huge amount of respect for Watts Atelier. I have, my sister's taken courses there, and that's a really good place. They tend to be a little more oriented, in my experience, based on what I see, towards, say, painting processes. So if you do a Watts Atelier type drawing, you're really well set up for the painting process in a lot of ways. Whereas what I'm doing is saying, let's get the action, let's get the story in there, which is this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 process. Makes sure that you get the simple shape, the construction. That's the action. That's the story. That's, it's not done until you have all of that, right? Then the filling in part is really filling it in, but not favoring any one part over any other. And then the focal point is the eye path to the focal point. So the eye follows to the eye path to a focal point. So here, let me come back into what I'm doing here. You can actually blend what I'm talking about in with your Watts Atelier training, I think, pretty easily.
Well, I'm trying to do more of what you're talking about because I'm giving up on the painting. I'm a hobbyist. I got a career. I got little kids.
Yeah.
I want to do something that's simpler and more drawing oriented. So I'm trying to sort of reprogram myself a bit. So whatever you think is the right way to go for expressing efficiently, that's what I want to do.
I am well known for being simple. So I think, I think we got something for you here. So we're going to come in. This is the eye path. Everybody see this? See, the eye path is coming up. So I'm saying I want you to take that path up the form, right? And then the focal point, you'll know this, is usually the eye closest to us, right? So basically, eye path means, and this is a focal point, the eye path tends to be towards the front. So if I'm doing an eye path, say, going up a cylindrical form, which is really what a figure is, I may start here and have my eye path cross that form like this. And what that means is I might make my shadows a little stronger in here. I'm going to detail a little bit more in here. And I'm going to do things like that on the inside. Okay? What is the job of the inside of your form? The job of the inside, right in here, the job of this area right here, this area right here, is to come forward. The job of the outside is to create a good silhouette, okay? So here's a good example that I use for my plant drawing class. Here is the back of the plant. The job of the back of the plant is to create an interesting silhouette because that helps the painting. The job of the front of the plant is to come forward because that provides depth. You see? So, and then I might even put some floaters in there just to make it more complex looking. But the job of the back is silhouette. And by the way, concepts don't care what the object is. They don't care. The concept of silhouette versus coming forward, it doesn't matter whether you're doing a figure or not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the same thing. And this is to come forward. So when we're putting a leg in, see, kind of like this, the job of the outside of the leg is to provide an interesting silhouette, see? The job of the inside of the leg is to come forward so that I can come in here. And then, you know, I might even push the outside out a little bit, see? So the idea of all that, see here we have, this comes out and in. The job here is to give me a good silhouette. See? Right? That's the outside edge. That's its job. Give me a good silhouette. The job of the inside is to bring this thing forward. See? So this comes in, there's something in here. This comes in here. This is attaching below. We have the biceps, we have genitalia. This here is going to the back. This is stretching back. You know, muscular, heroic build, external oblique, lots of muscles everywhere. And then, you know, the calf. Then we get down here, and the job of the back of the foot is to be in the back. This is going to come forward. You see what I'm saying? So the outside edge, silhouette. When I go in here and fill this in, like this, it reveals the silhouette. We want that silhouette to be good, see? And one of the things about working digitally, which I think is interesting, and some of the artists that you'll see, since maybe you don't want to do rendered paintings, maybe that's not as interesting to you or it's too much work. Sometimes I think it just feels a little bit old-fashioned, right? And what you're seeing is these really beautiful drawings being done where somebody fills this in. See, that's the silhouette that we're looking for. See, the job of that is to make that interesting. The silhouette down here is this. You know, do I have enough negative spaces showing up, right? How is this looking in here? See, that's a silhouette. I bring this in here. How's that silhouette? Bring this down here. How's that? Pretty good silhouette on this drawing. See, I'd be able to tell what she's doing with without a lot of internal detail. But the front of the drawing or the inside of the drawing, the job is to come forward, right? And so, you know, that's basically it. This would have decent silhouettes too, because I've got a lot of negative spaces interacting, you see. This has got some good silhouettes because all of this is interacting with each other very well. So it's just kind of coming in like this. Okay.
This is enormously helpful. Thanks so much.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. There you go. Okay. And if you want to paint digitally, see how fast that is? All right. Okay. So let me see.
It's 11.
Okay, Sang-ah is the boss of me, but we'll try to sneak in one more question before she forces me offline. She has the power of the plug, you know.
Can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I want to ask whether for this homework, we should just focus on figures that aren't extremely foreshortened, because then the dimensions of the boxes would be changing pretty dramatically there.
Okay. My hardest task is to stop Will from, yeah, that's absolutely true. So I don't think I quite understood that question. So could you
Should we focus on figures that are not too foreshortened for this homework? Because the focus is to construct them with these boxes, right? So the
yes,
dimensions might
yeah.
change pretty much.
The first week you're focusing on getting your mind wrapped around this system I'm showing you. That's really what the first week is about. And then what I'll be doing during your crit, like for example, you know, you're going to get your stuff in by, I think it's Thursday, Sang-ah, is that it?
Yes.
Yes. So you'll get it in by midnight Thursday night, okay? And then what happens on Friday is I'm going to spend the day critting your work and the class following this one. When I see your drawings, I'm going to do things like start drawing on top of them. And I'm going to start plugging anatomy right in on top of your drawings, okay? So the Thursday critique is basically just another lecture right on top of your drawings. And that way, it's actually longer than this class. Those critiques take several hours usually. And, you know, you can sort of skip through and look at different things. This lecture plus that one constitute the first week's lessons, right? So here I'm sort of introducing it. You'll see it on the critiques. People seem to like the critiques because, you know, I really go to town on them when I do it. And, you know, I know what I'm trying to get you to understand. And, you know, you'll get at least part of the way there. And based on where I see you, I'm going to show you how to get a little farther, just like every other teacher does. But digitally, it helps. The other thing is you can watch this lecture over and over again until the end of the class if you want. So this is going to go into some place mysterious to me, but available to you where you can get access to it. And so will my critiques. So you'll be able to get the critiques and all of that. And you can screen capture your homework assignments when I'm drawing on top of your stuff and all that. Plus the lecture page today will be dropped in and you'll be able to have the page I did today as well. Okay. So yes, try to draw volumetrically. I think I'm answering your question. Try to draw volumetrically. Don't draw a bunch of boxes though, right? Try to get away from this for a moment. This is when Sang-ah gets nervous. I'm going back to my screen yet again. And
well, so let me add to that question. So you were focused on torso today, and does that mean they need to draw only torso or full figure?
Draw everything. Draw everything. If you find that you can't get to the other stuff in 5 minutes, just do the torso. But draw as much as you can. The more you do, the more I'm going to critique. If you just draw torsos, I'll show you how to draw a few legs and arms, but if you put legs and arms on all your drawings, then I'm going to go through and find some good examples that let me go through there and really help you out. So, you know, get as much in there as you can. All right. Don't draw boxes like this. I know that a lot of classes like you to do it, but I just think it's, you know, usually the only person who can do this very well is the teacher, right? I like the idea of you getting used to the idea of doing this and then saying, you know, I know this is here. See, I can draw that in. And then there's the center line. Here is my rib cage. And then here, right on that inside edge is where you're going to find the hip box coming in like this. You're getting the same thing. You get the same volume. It just, you know, it looks more like a drawing. When I see this, this is like the international symbol of I'm a beginning drawing student, right? I don't know what I'm doing, right? When I see somebody draw a leg coming forward, and I see this box where the knee is, that's like, I am a rank beginner. And there's no need for it, right? When I draw, you can see a box. You can see a box. If I'm going to see that knee, the knee fits right in here like this. And I'll show you guys how to draw knees. Remember, the critique is a big part of this. That whole knee there is in front of the box. Sartorius attaches down there. Everything else attaches over there. Here's the bone, here's the side, right? I mean, I'm drawing around that box. Draw around the box and draw the knee. Don't draw that box, it'll never be right. It looks ugly and it tells everybody you don't know what you're doing, right? We want to conceal that as quickly as possible, all right? So think about that. And then when you get in here, see, the center line is going to stick out a bit like this, okay? And you're going to start getting this very sort of naturalistic looking figure. See, if I go like this, see, I can bring this up, draw that knee there, see, and then here, bring that all the way to the back. You know, these are all like, you know, superhero poses, basically, what they are. And, you know, if you go to Pinterest and you look up action poses, that's great. Don't draw the clothes, though. Just draw the, you know, skateboarders are great because, you know, they do all kinds of crazy stuff and they're wearing shorts. You know, all that stuff is good. And also remember, Bodies in Motion and Crocus Cafe is really good, too. And I think Bodies in Motion is terrific, you know, again, because they map out 3D models and you can literally rotate the image around and get it in the position you want, which teaches you how to pose as well. Because if you put it in certain positions, it's just going to cause you trouble, right? It's sort of like, if you draw me so I can't see one arm, look, I'm a guy with one arm, right? Okay, and that's what happens with art. If you don't show me this hand, I'm a guy with one arm. That's how people see it. They're going to be distracted by the fact that you can't see it. You do this. Now, if my hand is like, if my arm is like this, or kind of awkwardly back there where it's kind of part there and part not, the sheer awkwardness of it is a bad pose. If I'm doing this, you may want to have this be very clear, right? And those things allow you to experiment with the pose because they rotate around, and it'll teach you how to pick poses. So that's the advantage of Bodies in Motion. Also lighting, they let you mess with the lighting too. It's really great. They have software they're using. It's really good. Okay? So let me see here. Eugenia, how you doing?
I feel like I just opened the Ark of the Covenant and like my face is kind of melting off. I think I maybe absorbed about 1% of the information you imparted to us, but eventually my brain will be advanced enough that I can understand these things. But for right now, a lot of this is completely eldritch to me.
Yeah. This is how everybody feels at the end of the first day of class. The face melting off metaphor is, I've actually, oddly enough, heard that before. So I also taught freshmen for a while. And in one class, I did a demo for the poor thing. And I looked at her and I said, so you understand what I'm saying? And she just passed out in front of me and fell over sideways. And I caught her as she fell over. And later on in the term, I said the same thing to somebody else who actually went into hypoglycemic shock. But the effect was, I said, so you understand what I'm saying? And again, she went over. And then I had a brand new model that cut off her own circulation and passed out in the middle of her pose. I thought I was going to have to catch her, which would have been truly awkward. And yet my TA got up there ahead of me. I got a notice from the school saying, what are you doing to people in that class? You know, because, but the truth of the matter is, you catch on to this. This is, the way I teach this is new to you, but you're going to understand how fundamentally simple it is. It's really very simple. What I'm teaching you is very simple. From the pubic bone up, it's 3 boxes. The head is 1, the rib cage is 2, and the squishy middle and the hip box is the 3rd. Everything is going to fit in those boxes in terms of measurement, okay? And the arms and legs, I'm going to be developing that as time goes on, and I teach you enough anatomy to make it look believable. And what you're learning how to do is create the plan drawing, the construction drawing, on top of which you could build anything. You could build a Watts Atelier finish. It might look a little different because you're not constructing using some of the, sort of site-size techniques, which are very, very, very accurate, right? Which is why they like it. This is slightly less accurate, but not necessarily. It could be slightly less accurate, but it's much more emotive, right? It's storytelling drawing. That's what you're doing. So, but you can literally wrap any finish over it you want. You could wrap a 19th century French style finish over it if you want. You can make it look like a comic book artist if you want, because it all wraps over the same basic structure, and that's it. So that's why I give you a lot of other artists to look at, because I'm teaching you how to put things together. That's what I can teach you. But if you look at, say, Kwang Kim, or you look at some of these people here, you might say, I love the way they finish. So what I want to do is construct using Will's technique and finish using Kwang Kim's technique. Then you're learning from 2 people in the same class. You see what I'm saying? So it's just a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking. And when we get into a style-based class eventually, if you decide you want to do it, I really teach you how to use a variety of other artists, to help build your own personal style. So, your personal style is built off of other people. It always is. I basically teach out of the school of Raphael, right? I have an idealized figure in my head. I'm always wrapping over the form. If you look at Raphael's drawings, you'll see a lot of what you see. And my teacher was Glenn Vilppu. And so you'll also see a few remnants of Glenn Vilppu as well. Okay? Any other questions? Emerson, you doing okay? I think she left. But okay. So anybody else? Everybody doing okay? Don't be afraid of any of this stuff. Everybody gets it. Everybody gets it.
This is the clearest breakdown of the figure I've ever seen, personally. I think this is fantastic. I got your video, your lecture series, so maybe I got kind of a head start here, but the interactivity has made everything really click. So thank you so much again. This is awesome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. My pleasure. All right, you guys. I gotta let Sang-an make me go away so that I can get ready for my next class. All right. The next one we're doing is Mad Science, by the way, and they're going to be learning how to design a mad scientist lab. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon. And thank you very much. I really enjoy having people in this class, and I like teaching this class. So, all right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.